Dr. Strangelove, 1964, made a nation laugh at its own extinction. So accurate, the Pentagon suspected a breach. But the ending you saw was not what Kubrick filmed.
Which is the bomb run with Slim Pickens, which is hundreds of little cuts. It had taken months to cut. It was enormously complicated.
Did you know the original finale was an 11-minute pie fight where the president is struck down and a Nazi takes command? Or that the first screening was set for the day Kennedy was shot? These are 15 hidden truths, including how Kubrick tricked his actors into performances they never agreed to give.
I have a plan. Monsieur! I can walk!
Number 1. The ending Kubrick destroyed was 11 minutes long. The version audiences saw ends with Strangelove rising from his wheelchair declaring, "Mein Führer, I can walk!" and a hard cut to atomic bombs detonating while Vera Lynn sings, "We'll Meet Again." But that was not the original. Kubrick shot an 11-minute finale in which the Russian ambassador, caught photographing the war room, is tackled by General Turgidson. The ambassador retaliates by hurling a custard pie. It misses and strikes President Muffley in the face.
Approachable, very understanding. I need to sort of shift a bit and walk around here and pick up another angle.
What follows is a full-scale pie fight. 60 extras throwing 3,000 pies while the world ends outside. Kubrick intended it as a metaphor for war. Grown men in suits throwing things at each other for no reason while civilization collapses. But the extras were laughing. The metaphor had inverted, comedy without the horror. Kubrick called it a disaster of Homeric proportions and cut the entire sequence. Number 2. The film nearly opened on the day a real president was killed. Dr. Strangelove's first test screening was scheduled for November 22, 1963. That was the day President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. The screening was canceled. But the coincidence cut deeper than scheduling. In the deleted pie fight ending, after President Muffley is struck by the custard pie, General Turgidson cradles the fallen president in his arms and announces,
and which of course meant a big commitment in terms of money. I was set, Walter was set.
"Gentlemen, our beloved president has been struck down in his prime." That line, written months before Dallas, became impossible to include in any version of the film released to the American public. Kubrick had 2 reasons to cut the pie fight. The first was artistic, the tone was wrong. The second was historical. A scene depicting the President of the United States being struck down had become, overnight, something no audience could watch without thinking of a real assassination. The line was never heard in any theater. The footage still exists at the British Film Institute, screened publicly only once in 1999.
But it is necessary now to make a choice, to choose between 2 admittedly regrettable, but nevertheless...
Number 3. The novel's author was erased from his own creation. Dr. Strangelove began as a dead serious thriller. In 1958, a Welsh RAF officer named Peter George published a novel called Red Alert, a tense, realistic account of an accidental nuclear strike. The book ended with hope. Kubrick bought the rights for $3,500 and hired George to co-write the screenplay. But Kubrick kept finding the material too absurd to play straight.
We handled it that way. Failsafe was much more of a melodrama.
He later said, "One had to keep leaving things out which were either absurd or paradoxical in order to keep it from being funny, and these things seemed to be close to the heart of the scenes in question." He brought in satirist Terry Southern to push the script into black comedy. When Life magazine called Southern the film's principal author, George wrote a furious public letter demanding credit. 2 years after the film's release, Peter George took his own life. He was 42. Number 4. Kubrick sabotaged a rival film to protect his own. In 1962, 2 professors published a novel called Failsafe about a nuclear crisis nearly identical to Red Alert. A bomber is sent to attack Russia, cannot be recalled, and the American president must negotiate with the Soviets to prevent total war. Peter George and Kubrick sued, claiming plagiarism. The lawsuit was settled out of court, but the real damage was strategic. The legal battle delayed Failsafe's film adaptation by 9 months, ensuring that Dr. Strangelove reached theaters first.
What do I think about human beings? And I say one thing about humans, that everything that they invent is very sexual.
When Sidney Lumet's Failsafe finally opened in October 1964, audiences had already seen Kubrick's version of the same premise played as comedy. Henry Fonda, who played the president in Failsafe, later admitted he could not have delivered his performance with a straight face if he had seen Dr. Strangelove first. 2 films about the same nightmare. One man made sure his version was the only one audiences would remember. Number 5. Columbia Pictures forced Peter Sellers to become 3 people. Peter Sellers plays 3 roles roles in Dr. Strangelove: Group Captain Mandrake, President Muffley, and the title character. This was not a creative choice. Columbia Pictures agreed to finance the film only if Sellers played at least 4 major parts. The studio believes Sellers' multiple character performance in Kubrick's previous film Lolita was the primary reason that film had succeeded, and they wanted the same formula repeated. Sellers was originally cast as Major T.J. King Kong as well.
Each time the audience come back, whilst they may have just been loosened up by the comedy of it, something has to tell them subconsciously that inexorably you're going towards the main event.
The pilot who rides the nuclear bomb to oblivion. He attempted a Texas accent. It didn't work. According to multiple accounts, Sellers either genuinely broke his ankle during rehearsals or deliberately faked the injury to escape the 4th role. Kubrick needed a replacement and found Slim Pickens, a rodeo cowboy turned Western actor who had never appeared in a comedy. The solution was simple. Nobody told him he was in one. Number 6. Slim Pickens never knew he was funny. When Slim Pickens arrived in England, he had never left the American rodeo circuit. Kubrick showed him only his own scenes, never the full script, and let him believe the film was a serious war drama. Pickens played Major Kong with the deadpan sincerity he brought to every Western, adjusting his cowboy hat, checking his survival kit.
The studio had told him that early on, that we know what you're going to try to do. It's going to be one take only.
Riding the bomb like a bronco. Every mannerism that makes the performance iconic comes from an actor who genuinely believed he was playing a hero. Kubrick understood that Kong would only be terrifying if the man playing him believed completely in the mission. The comedy had to come from sincerity, not from winking at the audience. No one told Pickens the truth until the premiere. Number 7. George C. Scott was tricked into the performance of his career. George C. Scott wanted to play General Turgidson as a restrained, dignified military man, a well-intentioned extremist, not a clown. Kubrick agreed. Then he asked Scott to do a few warm-up takes where he went completely over the top, exaggerated facial expressions, wild physical comedy, manic energy. Kubrick promised these takes would never appear in the final film. They were practice, nothing more. They were not practice. Kubrick used every single one.
It was a much better line to end the film on when, galvanized by his return to Nazi power.
The performance audiences see in the finished film, the stumbling, the arm-waving, the absurd enthusiasm for nuclear war, is entirely composed of takes Scott believed would be thrown away. When Scott saw the finished film, he was furious. He reportedly vowed never to work with Kubrick again, and he never did. It is now considered one of the greatest comedic performances in American cinema, delivered by an actor who never agreed to give it. Number 8. The B-52 cockpit was so accurate, the Air Force suspected espionage. The Pentagon refused to cooperate with the film in any way. No technical assistance, no access to aircraft, no consultants. Production designer Ken Adam, who had already designed the villain's lair in Dr. No for James Bond, was left to reconstruct the interior of a B-52 Stratofortress from a single photograph and a comparison with the older B-29 cockpit. The B-52 was classified technology in the early 1960s. Its cockpit layout was a military secret.
It was amazing. I would put a title over here and I put a title over there, and then you didn't know whether to watch, the title or the background, and it looked terrible.
When Air Force officers were later invited to see the set, they confirmed it was correct down to the placement of individual instruments, including the CRM-114 discriminator, a specific piece of communications equipment. The accuracy was so uncanny that Kubrick himself became nervous, worried that Adams' research team had unknowingly crossed a line and that the FBI might investigate. No investigation ever materialized, but the incident confirmed something Kubrick had suspected. The real machinery of nuclear war was not classified because it was complex. It was classified because it was disturbingly ordinary. Number 9. The War Room was more real than the White House. Ken Adams' War Room, the enormous dark circular chamber with the ring of overhead lights and the massive illuminated map, does not exist. There is no war room beneath the Pentagon. None of this stopped it from entering the American imagination as real. When Ronald Reagan entered the White House in January 1981,
which in a sense is metaphorical for all the missiles that are coming as well, you just have these guys having a good old time.
He reportedly asked to be shown the War Room. He was disappointed to learn there was no such place. The set was built at Shepperton Studios in England, powered by over 10 miles of electrical cable. Adams' design was so persuasive that it replaced reality. For millions of Americans, the War Room from a Kubrick film is still more real than whatever actually exists beneath the Pentagon. Number 10. The most famous line in the film was never in the script. "Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room." That line is often cited as one of the greatest in cinema. It was improvised by Peter Sellers during filming. Many of Sellers' best moments as President Muffley were improvised, including the one-sided phone conversation with the Soviet premier, where Sellers invented the dialogue in real time while Kubrick let the camera run.
During the final editing, we were about to dub the film, and the last reel of the film, which is the most complicated, which is the bomb run with Slim Pickens, which is hundreds of little cuts.
Dr. Strangelove's involuntary Nazi salute, the black-gloved hand that keeps rising against the character's will, was also Sellers' invention. He added it spontaneously during a take, and Kubrick immediately recognized it as the physical manifestation of the film's thesis, that the mechanisms of destruction have a will of their own, and the people operating them are not fully in control. Number 11. The film started as a drama and became a comedy because reality was too absurd. Kubrick spent months developing Dr. Strangelove as a straight thriller. The early working titles reflect this: Edge of Doom, The Delicate Balance of Terror. But every realistic detail they added, the recall codes, the fail-safe procedures, the diplomatic phone calls, sounded funnier the more accurately it was depicted.
The events of November 22nd, 1963, John F. Kennedy's assassination, moved everything, shook everything up.
The bureaucracy of nuclear annihilation was inherently comic. The breakthrough came when Kubrick stopped fighting the absurdity and hired Terry Southern to reshape the script as satire. The character of Dr. Strangelove did not exist in George's novel. Kubrick and Southern invented him, a wheelchair-bound ex-Nazi whose body keeps betraying his allegiance to a dead regime. His mannerisms combined elements of Wernher von Braun, Herman Kahn, and Henry Kissinger. Number 12. A Coca-Cola machine almost prevented nuclear war. One of the film's sharpest satirical moments involves a genuine structural problem with Cold War security. Group Captain Mandrake discovers the recall code that will stop the bombers, but he needs to phone the Pentagon and does not have the correct change for the payphone. He asks Colonel Bat Guano to shoot the lock off a nearby Coca-Cola vending machine. Guano hesitates, not because the world is about to end, but because destroying the machine would be a violation of private property. This scene was not exaggerated.
Readily agreed. In fact, he may have even been the first one to suggest canceling, but Stanley had a more specific reason, because unlike the rest of us, Stanley knew the dialogue.
Kubrick's research had revealed that actual military communication systems in the early 1960s contained precisely these kinds of absurd bottlenecks. Situations where bureaucratic procedure could genuinely interfere with the prevention of nuclear catastrophe. The Department of Defense was reportedly uncomfortable with this scene, not because it was unfair, but because it was accurate. Number 13. We'll Meet Again was the cruelest choice Kubrick ever made. The film's final sequence, atomic bombs detonating while Vera Lynn sings We'll Meet Again, is one of the most devastating endings in cinema. The song was a World War II standard, recorded in 1939, meant to comfort soldiers leaving for the front. It promised reunion. Kubrick placed it over footage of total annihilation. The sweetness of Lynn's voice against the mushroom clouds creates a dissonance no orchestra could achieve. The generation that survived the last war built the machine that ensures there is no surviving the next one. The song your parents sang to stay alive is now the soundtrack to everyone dying. Number 14. The Doomsday Machine was not fiction. In the film, the Soviet Union reveals it has built a Doomsday Machine, a network of buried cobalt bombs programmed to detonate automatically if the country is attacked, ensuring that even a victorious enemy would inherit a dead planet. The concept sounds like satire. It was not. Nuclear strategist Herman Kahn had described an almost identical device in his 1960 book On Thermonuclear War, and openly debated whether such a machine should be built. The logic was the same as the film's. If the enemy knows that any attack guarantees mutual extinction, no attack will ever be launched. Kahn's work was widely read in both Washington and Moscow.
That's true, yes.
How did you react to that?
Well, I didn't react. I just mouthed things.
Decades later, it emerged that the Soviet Union had actually constructed a system remarkably close to the Doomsday Machine, a dead-hand network called Perimeter, designed to launch a retaliatory nuclear strike automatically if Soviet leadership was destroyed. The system became operational in 1985, and according to multiple reports, may still be active today. Dr. Strangelove did not predict the future, it described the present. The audience just did not know it yet. Number 15. The film is a warning that arrived disguised as a joke. Here is the secret of Dr. Strangelove that 60 years have not dulled. Every character in the war room believes he is the reasonable one. General Turgidson believes in strength. President Muffley believes in diplomacy. Dr. Strangelove believes in survival planning. The Russian ambassador believes in deterrence. None of them is insane in the clinical sense. Each is operating from a coherent internal logic that, taken to its conclusion, ends the world. The film's horror is not that a madman started nuclear war. It is that sane men, following rational procedures, were unable to stop it. Kubrick understood in 1964 what most people still refuse to accept.
We had people like Joan Namath and Barbara Mandrell and some of the other folks that were non-country, but we were able to mix them with country people.
The systems we build to protect ourselves are the systems most likely to destroy us, and the men operating them will follow protocol all the way to the end, because following protocol is what reasonable people do. The deleted pie fight showed the leaders of the free world throwing pastry at each other like children. The ending Kubrick kept showed them calmly discussing survival ratios while the bombs fell. He chose the version that was worse, and he was right. If this changed how you see the film, hit like and subscribe, because the movies you thought you understood were always trying to tell you something you were not ready to hear.